There's borders, there's boundaries, there's barriers everywhere in our world, and long lines that keep us separated, that keep us this world of us versus them. And the table, yeah, it's a long line, and it says the exact opposite.
Welcome to the official CultureCon podcast, where we explore how work actually works.
We're your hosts, Zach Blumenfeld
and Nick Lombardino.
Whether you're leading a team, shaping culture, or just passionate about making work more meaningful, you're in the right place.
Each episode will bring you stories, insights, and bold ideas from people who are building better workplaces and better work experiences.
The official CultureCon podcast starts now.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the CultureCon podcast. Today, we are joined by someone who is reimagining what leadership, connection, and belonging can actually look like inside of organizations. Our dear friend, Tim Jones, is with us today. Tim is the executive director of Longer Tables, a nonprofit focused on bringing people from all walks of life together to create connection and belonging through shared meals. Through their work, they've helped over 12,000 people connect across communities and companies, all centered around a simple but powerful idea, the table. Tim has also been a close partner of ours over the past 3 years, helping us set tables at our CultureCon events in Madison and in Las Vegas. And we've seen firsthand the kind of meaningful connection that happens when people are invited to show up as their full selves. And at the heart of his work is this belief that in a world that feels increasingly disconnected, real progress happens when we slow down, sit down, and truly see each other. So, Tim, we're so thankful and excited that you're here. Welcome to the show.
Y'all, this is easily going to be the highlight of like my afternoon. No, just kidding. Like of my week or month, and I'm just gonna lift this for anyone watching the video of this. My One of
Product
my favorite
placement.
mugs. And look at just before we get started, Madison over the last few years, CultureCon Madison and Vegas, and I am not just saying this, and I'm actually getting emotional, like have been the highlights of my past few years. Not only the culture that y'all are creating and your authenticity and your modeling for everyone at that conference, like and your goofiness, the billboard that I saw in the airport, I will never forget that. That has set apart. But your love for people and your authenticity. So thank you for the gift that you've given me personally, where I can just be human. And thanks for inviting us Longer Tables to set tables. It's really been a delight and a joy to learn from your community.
Thank you, Tim. I mean, it's mutual. Like, we love our partnership with Longer Tables and the Connection crew. When I talk to people that last day at the event, people just talk about the Longer Tables and the connections that they make at the Longer Tables and the people that are now in their lives forever. Like, it's not just like a conference connection that you forget about. It's someone that you have a deep conversation with. So let's start there. I want to talk about the name Longer Tables because it's such a powerful image, especially if you've been to a Longer Table before. What does Longer Tables actually mean to you, and what led you to kind of build your work around this concept or idea?
Oh my gosh, there is just something powerful about a longer table. Like when you see a photo of a longer table, this is so interesting. You don't have to explain to any human being what is happening if they see a photo of a long table with people sitting at it. Like a human intuitively understands what's happening at that. And they understand, oh my gosh, if there's people from all walks of life sitting at this table, this means that there is a place in our world that we can convene and see each other. It is this beautiful thing, and I don't have to tell you guys, like there's borders, there's boundaries, there's barriers everywhere in our world, and long lines that keep us separated, that keep us this world of us versus them. And the table, yeah, it's a long line, and it says the exact opposite. I'll never forget an artist on the Mexican border set a table through the border. and people sat on both sides. Even though the border wall was there, the table went through. Oh my gosh, like, this is the power of the table. And then there's, like, longer. This word longer is communicates there's a movement of growth. It's continually growing longer. It's scaling. It's always scalable. You can make that table as long as you want, which, of course, communicates there is a seat for everyone, like longer tables. Like, some guy over in Utah. Hey, I want to be a part. Yeah, we come on, get over here. We got a place for you. So that is all like intuitive to this just simple statement, longer tables that every human just gets.
That's so good. Yeah, so, like, let's try and break it down a little bit, the art and the science of the longer table, because when you explain it, you're right, like, it's the antidote to living in a time where there's so much isolation, there's so much loneliness, obviously a ton of polarization right now, and that the table can be part of that solution. So, like, what is it? What is it about something as simple as a shared meal that creates this kind of impact?
I love this so much. I don't think anyone is not aware of the epidemic of isolation and loneliness, the depth of our separateness and are moving into our corners away from each other. That's part of what the table does is it brings us physically closer to one another. This proximity of 36 inches, like it's pretty awkward when you're that close to someone in conversation, especially the pandemic. Like to be 36 inches away from someone, that's almost we have to rediscover that. So the table proximity does that. But I just believe that isolation is the fundamental ill for all of humanity. Isolation means you're not communicating, you're not listening, there's no assumptions. Everything breeds when there is space between us and we are isolated. We go into our head and dark things happen. I know that personally when I'm alone and lies come, it's just not true. So we have so few places in our world, in our culture, that we can be in that space with one another. So, not to mention that the table is this beautiful thing that happens to be home to every human being that has ever lived on this planet. Like, where else do we have that? Like, everyone knows what happens when you sit at a table. And then all of the beautiful things that are happening as we biologically sustain our lives, we socially sustain our lives by things like eye contact, like looking into people's eyes as you speak, sharing stories, a place to slow down. Hello, do we need places to slow down in our lives with each other and actually see each other and put the phone down for right? So the table kind of forces and invites all of those postures. And the last thing I'll say, it's so interesting. I'm not going to go off on technology, but like before modernity, before electricity, like the human was forced to slow down and find a place, and it was called the campfire. And the campfire, like, was the original kitchen, right? It was the original dining room. And what did we do at the campfire, man? I long for these days. I hate camping, but I love campfires. And that's where we share stories. That's where we make meaning of what's happening in our lives. That's where we make connections with one another. So we desperately need the campfire. We desperately need the table to physically connect us and then socially say, hey, we're not alone. We're living this journey together.
It's so true, and Nick and I finally got a chance to experience the longer table last year in Vegas at CultureCon West, and yeah, I think I took a different approach or a different lens to it being like a conference organizer because that week leading up to the event and the week of the event, it is just like chaos. It's like our Super Bowl. It's the busiest weeks of our year. And to have, a couple hours where we just, like you said, slow down. There's no worries about conference. There's no technology. We're not on our phones. And I can just sit there and connect with people on a deeper level. I feel like that experience, it was much needed because of the stress of the conference, but to just like get to know people on a deeper level, yeah, it was pretty powerful. It was really special, and I mean, at my table, I remember specifically like I was across from a CEO, there was a person from a small startup, another person at a different function, someone was the head of culture, but we didn't talk about work at all. It was just like someone brought up something cool going on in their life, someone brought up a challenge, we talked about family, friends, interests. Yeah, I'm curious from your angle as the organizer of longer tables, what do you see happening in these moments, and what, like, shifts people to leave work at the door, leave their phone at the door, and just, like, be present and focus?
Yeah, this is I'm so glad, like, you didn't have to for a minute for, like, during dinner, or during the conference, you don't have to perform, right? You just get to be. Like, how refreshing that I just get to be for a minute. So there's a handful of what we call intentionalities, things that we do to set the table, set the space that ends up making it a safe space and a place optimized, like nuclear power to optimize connection and authentic connection. As the patron saint Brene Brown says, there is no connection without vulnerability in creating a place. So that's what we do through these intentionalities. It starts with a beautiful table with linens and greens and fruits and vegetables. Those are all intentional, symbolizing life. People are not throwaways, so we don't do throwaway things on the table. It's real plates, it's real glasses. And it says, hey, you're important, you're worthy, you're valuable. So it starts there. Another important part are place cards, where people walk into a table and they see their name at a place card. And they might not think about this consciously, but what that says is we anticipated you, we set a place for you. Like, and if you didn't show up tonight, there'd be a hole in this community. There'd be a disconnect, right? So, y'all, I've seen people tear up when they saw their name at the table. They just weren't expecting it. And we don't use our names very often anymore. So that's one thing. The last thing I'll share is we have two rules to every table. These are fundamental rules to every table we do, whether we're doing it inside a company or a conference or wherever. And it's number one, there is no job talk, there is no job titles. That is a rule. It is not welcome because, as we all know, we tend to identify ourselves through our vocation and through our job. And when I share my vocation, I'm instantly assessing the social capital, right, at the table. And for me, it's not judgments about other people. It's me probably feeling kind of shame worthy that I'm sitting next to a CEO and like, who am I to be sitting next? You know what? We are not our jobs. And so we just, pun intended, take that off the table. And I love this because then people are like, oh, yeah, you see this little panic for a second of like, oh, what are we going to talk about? So the second rule is we want to experience the real you. So this table is not a table of performance or impressing anyone. Wherever you're at today, we invite you to be in that place. Those two rules, it blows me away every time. It creates enough social, emotional safety for people to take a small step into vulnerability and authenticity because we're all like back on our heels for a second. When no one's allowed to share their job title, the table is equalized instantly. And all that's left is we're just a bunch of humans eating dinner at the table. And then we have conversation prompts at the table. And that's just all about storytelling. Share about a memorable meal from your childhood, share about your best friend as a kid and what connected you. So those are the things when we start authentically sharing our stories and holding space for each other, sharing and listening. I mean, within about 5 minutes, I'm telling you, there's a connection, we find commonalities, and we see the other person as a human being.
Those, those table prompts were so energizing, and they saved my butt because Zach and I knew going into this event that we couldn't talk about work, and we were so excited for that. Like Zach mentioned, like, we needed that as, like, a little respite to just kinda get out of conference organizer mode. So I was, like, so giddy and excited to not talk about work, and then we get up from the table to go into the buffet line to get our food, and what's the first question out of my mouth to the woman I'm with? I was like, Tell me what do you do for work?" And then I was like, "Shit, don't answer that."
Same
Um
thing happened to me, yep.
yeah. I was like, "What was the best meal you had growing up as a kid?" And then, it took off from there. But, like, the point is that unfortunately, that's just been so ingrained in our psychology. It just as, like, an icebreaker, let's say, like, I'm not trying to, like, deconstruct it too much, but it's just like that's one of the first things you think of. And so ever since then, thanks to you, Tim, I've been so much more mindful of how frequent that is something that's like even in work settings where it would be appropriate to ask more about what people do. I'm still a little bit more apprehensive to bring it out like right away and just try and, make it fluid and more human in how I speak to someone. So thank you for those valuable lessons. So okay, so I've heard you say in the past that you're with longer tables, you're not just creating events, but you're forming leaders who set tables. And I'm hoping you can explain the difference between those two things. Like what does it look like to actually develop what I think you've called table leadership?
Yeah, I think I have this sneaking suspicion, especially around like workplace engagement and workplace culture work of if we, do this program or do this event. And I'm not saying, I mean, obviously all of us are super thoughtful about this, but even myself, I tend to think, well, if I do this book or I do this program or I do this event, it's going to transform eventually. And I don't think it's events that transform. Similar to information, in the West, we think, oh, if I just get the right information, that's going to change things. That's going to transform. Information never has transformed anyone. It's modeling, it's experience, it's sharing space, being engaged with someone that's showing us a deeper way. So we are not an event company. We are forming leaders who cultivate cultures of authentic connection and belonging. Throughout this, we're probably about 3 or 4 years ago, as I was reflecting on what we were doing, I started thinking about some of the leaders in my life, and they pop up, from teachers in college to some supervisors to like political figures, national political figures who I feel have been leaders in my life. And I noticed something about them. It was never about domination. It was never exerting power. It was always them setting a figurative table for me where they invited the whole Tim, the good, bad, and ugly, and messy and beautiful, all of it to the table. And we're almost nauseated talking about we got to invite the whole true self and be seen at work. But that's what the healthiest leaders do is say, Nick, Zach, I want all of you, man. I want what's going on in your family. I want what's going on in your child. I want your future, your passions. Like, how can we create a place at work or wherever we're at to invite all of that? Because Harvard studies show us when people feel welcome, like in all of their humanity, the studies like innovation, collaboration, creativity all blossoms, right? When people feel safe and welcome and part of this thing. So leadership, I'm just convinced that leadership formation has to start with the inner person. Whatever you believe about yourself, whatever you believe about the world and others, whatever your fundamental worldview is, determines how you show up in the world. And if you're not someone who is doing the work and seeking health and wholeness and belief that you are enough, how are you ever gonna give that away? You're never gonna give it away. And all this other stuff is band-aids until we start becoming people who show up for ourselves first and then create that culture and lead from that place.
It's so true, and I'm just thinking back to the longer table that we were at in Vegas, and the way you kicked off the conference or kicked off the longer table. It was you and Andrew Bishop, who was the former president of Recon Nation. It's just like as soon as you both started talking, everyone's guards went down, and you felt like you truly belong there. And right off the bat, it was sharing stories about I remember Andrew shared a story about his childhood and then his family's longer table that they have, every night at home, 6 p.m. You're at the table, no matter if you're, going off to sports or whatnot. And that was really cool just to hear like some personal stories. And I know you talk about belonging as like real DEI and about leaders needing to take the mask off and tell the truth about what they're facing. They're being vulnerable and they're being authentic. And I just thought that was such a cool way to start the longer table. And I'm just curious, like at other longer tables, maybe not in the conference setting, how does that look like? How do you kick things off? And how do you kind of like have people take their guards down and feel like they truly belong right off the bat?
Yeah, I don't wanna tell Andrew's story, but I do remember just the one part of his story is lamenting the fact that he wasn't super present to his kids. And here we have a CEO of a big company, sharing in front of peers and colleagues, and here he's taking a mask off and saying, "Man, I can do better as a dad." That's leadership. Because in an instant he gives everyone else permission to not to say, "Hey, I'm not alone in maybe failing as a parent because of my work," but there's no shame in that, and we're just going to be honest and tell the truth about what it is to be someone that really engaged at work, and the desire to balance that with being a dad and being a family member. So I am convinced that leadership is taking the mask off first. And I kind of talked about this from the beginning, but you cannot create a culture of belonging and honesty and authenticity, vulnerability without first going there yourself and modeling and saying it's safe to do this in this place. And I'm not talking about trauma dumping. I'm not talking about spilling your guts every day at work. There's obviously a balance to this, but it really starts with that humility and being honest with yourself of what's happening inside of me, the fear, the questions around my worthiness, am I enough, the pain that I have, and starting to do work with that is taking off that mask a bit, because when you do that you give everyone permission to do that. That is what is going to create that deeper connection.
So good, dude. That's so good. We're getting close to wrapping up here, but Zach and I were eager to ask you one question in particular, which was, tell us about one of the best meals you've ever had in your life. Because Zach and I are, what's a mild way of putting it, Zach? We're food obsessed is probably the most
We're
tepid
foodies. We're
description.
we're
Yeah,
foodies. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So yeah, just like one of the best meals you've ever had. We want to hear
Yeah.
it.
I'm going to try to make this short. In 2019, my mom was nearing the end of her life, and I had planned to walk the Camino in northern Spain, the Camino de Santiago, if y'all know what that is. Oldest pilgrimage almost in world history. You walk miles and miles towards Santiago, and you're walking. When you start walking, you're walking with people from all around the world, really. And I joined my buddy, and I met a couple from Britain, who older couple that were walking the Camino, Steve and Angela, and we instantly kind of hit it off, and we shared some meals together, and then we would go up beyond them, and and they'd stay behind. And we finally, at a town outside Santiago, we said our goodbyes because we knew we wouldn't see each other again. So we finished our trip. A couple days later, we're in Santiago drinking wine and eating bread on a plaza in the old city, and I look up and here comes Steve and Angela. They caught up to us. And it was like a reunion of long lost family members. It was this beautiful moment. And we ended up going to a steakhouse and having the most incredible steak I've ever had. And at that table was, in a way, a last supper, because my mom would die 2 months later, and we would find out about a week later that this, for Steve and Angela, was his last pilgrimage because he had leukemia and he died a month later. And I can't even tell you what happened from that table. We have now traveled to visit them, Angela and her family in the UK. She has come and stayed with us, like, so that journey of traveling together through the mountaintops, through the valleys, through all of that, through eating together, through doing the work together, and then culminating at the end of the day by sharing a meal. That formed my heart and created a deep connection that I'll never forget. So that table of steak, man, was it.
That's beautiful, dude. That's beautiful.
Do we have time to hear from both of you or one of you? I want to hear.
Yeah, I was trying to think about this too from my point. I remember so many. meals as a kid at my grandparents' house, mainly around holidays. Like, I remember specifically timely because it's the second night of the Jewish holiday Passover, and it's all about you're having a big meal around a table and celebrating the Passover Seder holiday. I remember at my grandparents' house just, like, growing up, and when I was younger, I thought it was kinda boring because you have to read this book about Passover, and it was kinda depending who was leading the Seder, if it was my uncle, it'd be a pretty long service, and as a five-year-old, you just wanna go and play with your cousins. But as I grew older, I realized, like, this is really awesome. I get to spend a couple hours around a table with my family. We're eating, we're talking about the Jewish people and the history of Passover and the Seder. And yeah, now it's one of my favorite traditions in my family is going to Milwaukee for my mom's side of the family and just spending a night with that side and sharing stories and catching up with family. And my grandma's making the brisket. I'm there in a second. It's pretty good.
I love that. I love that, Zach. And isn't it true about the Seder as well as Shabbat that there is a open seat typically for the stranger or the
Yeah,
neighbor or
good
yeah.
call, yeah. Yeah, there's kind of this figure in Judaism, Elijah, and so you always leave either a seat open for Elijah or the door, like, during the service, you kinda open the door and let him in symbolically, or my uncle, who's always late, we always make a joke because the doorbell rings, like, an hour into the service, and there's, there's my
Classic.
uncle, so, "Oh, Elijah decided to show up this year," but,
That's a
uh, yeah, yeah, always leave a seat open for him, yep.
That's amazing, dude. Yeah, Zach, I was convinced you were gonna say hitting the McDonald's off Mineral Point Road, but that was way more beautiful than I than I was anticipating.
That too, don't get me wrong.
That's it. Yeah. I say it half jokingly, but there's this famous restaurateur, David Chang. He has like Mamafuko and countless other pretty notable restaurants, Michelin rated restaurants. But he had this Netflix show years ago called Ugly Delicious. You're nodding your head, Tim. Have you seen this before?
I I remember hearing about it. I haven't seen
Y
it.
you gotta see it with your work. I think you'd really love this, but, the very first episode of this series was David Chang going out and just trying a whole bunch of different pizza, everything from, like, fast food takeout all the way to, like, New Haven style, and he's just kinda, you know, given his take and sharing stories. It's really beautiful, but one of the things that he said as part of that first episode that stuck with me was, um food is healing for him, and something that he does apparently is every week he orders out Domino's pizza, and he was like, and the reason why I eat it is because it's like it's comforting and it's healing for me because it takes me back to a moment in time where when I eat it I remember sleepovers with my best friends, watching movies, playing video games, being with my family, and it was just so like it was beautiful because you're seeing this guy who's like world renowned for like next level cuisine, and he's telling you, "I order Domino's every week because of the restoration it gives to me." So you made me think of that because one of my most favorite meals in recent memory was we had a little pizza party at our house where I invited over a couple of friends who have been making homemade pizza, and so I've been dabbling a little bit myself. So all of us kind of treated my kitchen as like our testing space, and we brought all the families over and had the kids playing while we were just ripping through dough and throwing stuff in the oven and having it come out, and it just yeah, man, it was beautiful. So yeah, every time now that I have a meaningful experience around food, I'm always thinking about Tim, and I know Zach's feeling the same.
100%,
Well,
100%.
I remember Taco Bell in Vegas. That was awesome to share that with y'all. I mean, honestly, well, those like, dude, those anchor points of like when I talk about, I sometimes think about that. And when I'm off alone and I'm getting caught up in the worries and the spiraling of life, and I have Taco Bell, like it anchors me. Food anchors me to that time of like, no, 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 no. You are loved. You are not alone. You are well.
It's so true.
Mic
And
drop, dude.
how many
Wow.
times in your life can you say that you had all you can eat, all you can drink Taco
I
Bell
mean,
Cantina? That's
one, one and maybe only one time, but it was
yeah,
great. It was great.
it's probably a once in a lifetime achievement. Yes,
That's
yes.
right. That's right.
All right. So we like to end every episode by giving you a chance to give a shout out to someone, of someone who may have made an impact or difference in your life. So yeah, the mic is yours to shout out individual in your life.
So many, and I'm just gonna share, my dad. I lost my dad 3 weeks ago, and 88 years old, he was absolutely full of life. He never met a stranger, and, I remember him asking waiters, waitresses, servers, "What's your dream?" And I watched as a kid, half annoyed that he would be taking their time up with this, but, I saw servers, like, tear up because no one had ever asked them what their dream is, and to lavish worthiness upon them, not seeing them as a server, seeing them as a whole human being, and that was my dad, and he created spaces, for people to feel seen and valued and important and that their story mattered, so I'm just honoring him and taking, and probably talking too much and telling too many stories. And I'm gonna take that with me probably the rest of my life.
What's his name, Tim? Remind us.
Ron Jones.
Ron Jones.
Shout out to Ron.
He lives in you, dude. So much of you
Yep.
describing your father is how we see you and admire you. So you keep shining that light bright, dude. And thank you so much for your time today and all of the future partnerships and adventures we get to go on together. You're the greatest collaborator and friend, and we're so lucky to know you, buddy.
Yeah. Thank you, Tim. This was powerful. We appreciate it.
Thanks for being all y'all, the real
That's
thing.
real. That's real, dude. Thanks for your time, buddy. We'll talk
All
to
right,
you
guys.
soon.
And thanks for listening to this episode of the CultureCon podcast. We'll talk to y'all later. That's a wrap on this episode of the official CultureCon podcast.
If you got something out of it, share it with a friend, a teammate, or a fellow culture geek.
And don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss an episode.
And if you want more ways to stay connected and inspired, check out our upcoming events page for a full listing of webinars, workshops, and conferences.
You'll find the link in the show notes, and we'd love to welcome you to a CultureCon event soon.
Until next time,